I want you to stop for a moment and think about something with me. Right now, in this very second, there is a thought moving through your mind. Maybe it's doubt. Maybe it's hope. Maybe it's just the hum of distraction, the static of everyday noise. But here's what most people don't realize. What I spent decades discovering through the most profound spiritual and psychological research of my life, that one thought, that single invisible thread of consciousness you're holding right now, is not just shaping your day. It's building your entire future. It's constructing the architecture of your 2026, brick by invisible brick, whether you know it or not. I've watched it happen thousands of times. A woman sits in a quiet room, broke, alone, convinced her life is over. One thought shifts, just one, and 6 months later, everything has changed. Not because the world suddenly became generous, not because luck knocked on her door, but because she learned what I'm about to share with you today. She learned how to choose the one thought that builds instead of destroys. Your subconscious mind, this vast, infinite intelligence within you, doesn't judge your thoughts. It doesn't care if they're true or false, helpful or harmful. It simply accepts what you repeatedly feed it and begins to express it in your world. And that's the staggering truth that most people live their entire lives without understanding. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are not at the mercy of the economy, your past, your family, or your failures. You are, right now, in this moment, the architect of what comes next. But here's where it gets both terrifying and beautiful. Most of us have been unconsciously selecting the wrong thought. The one that breaks down instead of builds up. The one that replays old wounds instead of imagining new possibilities. And we've been doing it so automatically, so habitually, that we think it's just who we are. We think it's reality. But it's not reality. It's just a habit of mind. And any habit can be changed. So before we go any further, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't about positive thinking as some shallow performance. This isn't about pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is about understanding the actual mechanics of creation, the invisible laws that govern how thoughts become things, how consciousness becomes experience. This is about learning to work with the most powerful force in your life, your own mind, instead of against it. What I'm going to share with you today transformed my life, and I've watched it transform thousands of others. It's simple, but don't mistake simple for easy. It requires something most people aren't willing to give: attention, persistence, and a willingness to question everything you've been taught about how life works. But if you stay with me, if you really hear what I'm saying, and, more importantly, if you apply it, your 2026 won't just be different. It will be unrecognizable. It will be the year everything finally clicked. The year you stopped fighting yourself and started creating with intention. Are you ready? Because we're about to go deep. Let me tell you what this video is really about. Not the surface promise, but the actual transformation waiting for you if you give me the next hour of your complete attention. This isn't another motivational speech that fires you up for 20 minutes and then fades by tomorrow morning. This is about fundamentally understanding how your mind works, how reality responds to consciousness, and how you can deliberately, scientifically, spiritually engineer the life you actually want to live. Here's what we're going to explore together. First, I'm going to show you the exact mechanism by which one single thought, chosen and maintained, begins to reorganize your entire life. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, actually, materially, measurably reorganize it. I'm going to explain why most people's prayers and affirmations fail, and why a small percentage of people seem to manifest miracles effortlessly. The difference isn't luck. It isn't privilege. It's understanding. Then I'm going to walk you through real stories, including my own, where this principle was tested in the fires of real desperation. I'm talking about moments when everything looked impossible, when every logical voice said give up, and yet one thought, one properly held mental image, changed everything. You need to hear these stories not to be entertained, but to build your faith, to show you what's actually possible when you stop operating from fear and start operating from understanding. After that, we're going into the lessons. The practical, applicable wisdom that you can start using today. I'm going to teach you how to identify the one thought that's been sabotaging you, probably for years. I'm going to show you how to replace it with the one thought that builds. And I'm going to explain why your emotions, not just your words, are the secret ingredient that most people miss entirely. Finally, And this is where the real magic happens. I'm going to give you the practice. The actual daily techniques, the mental disciplines that turn this from interesting information into lived experience. Because knowledge without application is just entertainment. And you didn't come here to be entertained. You came here to change. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what to think, how to think it, and why it works. You'll understand the invisible laws that govern manifestation, prayer, and personal transformation. And you'll have a clear, actionable path forward. Not someday. Not when conditions are perfect. Starting today, December 30th, as you stand on the edge of a brand new year. But I need something from you right now. I need you to decide that you're all in, not half listening while scrolling through your phone, not playing this in the background while you do dishes. I need your full presence, because what I'm about to share is too valuable to absorb casually. It took me a lifetime to understand this. It's taken thousands of years of spiritual and mystical tradition to refine this. You can have it all in the next hour, but only if you're truly here. Close the other tabs. Silence your phone. Take a deep breath. We're about to begin the most important conversation about your mind, your power, and your future that you might ever have. Your 2026 is not yet written. It's being written right now, with the thought you choose in this moment. So let's choose wisely. Let's choose powerfully. Let's choose the one thought that builds everything you've ever wanted. I want to take you back to a moment in my own life when I discovered this truth in a way that left no room for doubt. It wasn't in a library, though I spent years studying there. It wasn't in a lecture hall, though I gave hundreds of talks. It was in a small, dark room where I sat with nothing but my own mind and a decision that would change everything. I had been teaching about the power of the subconscious mind for years. I understood the principle intellectually. I had seen it work in other people's lives. But there's a difference between knowing something and knowing it in your bones, in your blood, in the marrow of your existence, and I was about to learn that difference. I had a situation that looked absolutely impossible by every worldly standard. The details don't matter as much as the feeling, and the feeling was this: I was trapped. The circumstances seemed immovable. Every logical solution had failed, and I had a choice that everyone faces at some point. Do I accept that this is just how life is? Do I become bitter, resigned, a victim of forces beyond my control? Or do I put everything I'd been teaching to the ultimate test? I chose to test it. I sat in that room and I did something that felt absurd at the time. I closed my eyes and I imagined, in vivid detail, the situation completely resolved. Not as I hoped it would be. Not as I wished it might be. But as if it already was. I saw it, felt it, lived it in my mind as a present, actual reality. I heard the words I would hear. I felt the relief I would feel. I saw the changed circumstances as clearly as I saw the walls of that room. And here's the crucial part, the part that most people miss when they try this and fail. I didn't do it once and hope for the best. I did it over and over again, multiple times a day, until the mental image became more real to me than the physical circumstances. Until when I opened my eyes and saw the problem still there, I could smile and think, that's just the old reality catching up. The new one is already done in consciousness. It felt crazy. It felt like denial. It felt like I was lying to myself. But I persisted, because I understood something that most people don't. The subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. It accepts the image, the feeling, the conviction, and it begins to work in ways far beyond our conscious understanding to make the outer world match the inner vision. 3 weeks later, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic at first. Just a small change, an unexpected phone call, a conversation I didn't see coming. But that small change led to another, and within 3 months, the impossible situation had resolved itself in a way I never could have orchestrated consciously. It didn't happen the way I thought it would. It happened better. That experience taught me something I've never forgotten. The one thought that builds your life isn't just any positive thought. It's not just wishful thinking or desperate hoping. It's a specific, clear, emotionally charged mental image of the end result you desire, held with faith and persistence until your subconscious accepts it as true and begins to express it in your world. Let me tell you about someone else. A woman I worked with, I'll call her Sarah, though that's not her real name. Sarah came to one of my lectures years ago, and she was drowning, divorced, struggling financially, estranged from her children, battling depression so heavy she could barely get out of bed most days. She told me later that she came to that lecture as a last resort, half hoping I'd say something that would help, half convinced nothing could. I taught the principle I'm teaching you now. One thought, held properly, changes everything. And Sarah decided to try it, not because she believed it, but because she had nothing left to lose. The one thought she chose was simple. I am surrounded by love and abundance. That's it. Not complicated, not fancy, just that one sentence, repeated over and over, while imagining what it would feel like if it were true. At first, she told me, it felt like a cruel joke. She'd say the words and immediately her mind would argue back. No, you're not. You're alone and broke and failing. But she kept going. She'd say it in the morning. She'd say it at night. She'd close her eyes and imagine receiving a hug from her daughter, depositing money in the bank, laughing with friends. She'd feel the warmth, the security, the joy, even though none of it was real yet. Weeks passed. Nothing seemed to change. She almost quit a dozen times, but something in her, some small stubborn spark, kept her going. And then, slowly, things began to shift. A former colleague reached out with a job opportunity. Her daughter sent a text, just a small one, but it was contact after months of silence. A check arrived in the mail she'd forgotten about. Small things, but they were real. Sarah kept going with her one thought. And the small things became bigger things. The job led to a promotion. The text led to a conversation, then a visit, then a reconciliation. The check led to financial breathing room, which led to better decisions, which led to stability. Within a year, Sarah's life was completely transformed. Not because circumstances suddenly became generous, but because she learned to work with her mind instead of against it. When I saw her again, she was radiant, not fake happy, but genuinely at peace. She said something I'll never forget. I didn't realize I'd been building my life with the wrong thought for decades. I'd been thinking I'm not enough, I'll never have enough, I'm all alone. And my subconscious just kept saying, okay, you're right, and creating more of that. Once I changed the thought, everything changed. It's almost too simple to believe. But that's the truth. It is simple. It's so simple that most people overlook it, thinking the solution to their problems must be more complicated, more difficult, more distant. They keep looking outside themselves for something or someone to change their circumstances, never realizing the power they hold in their own consciousness. I've seen this pattern thousands of times. The businessman who was failing until he started imagining, really feeling, himself as successful. The artist who couldn't get recognition until she started seeing herself, in her mind's eye, as celebrated and valued. The sick person who began to recover when they stopped identifying with illness and started experiencing, mentally and emotionally, themselves as whole and healthy. These aren't anomalies. They're not special people with special gifts. They're ordinary humans who learned an extraordinary truth. Your subconscious mind is the most powerful creative force you have access to. And it takes orders from your conscious thoughts, especially the ones you think repeatedly with feeling and conviction. Now, I can hear some of you thinking, but Joseph, I've tried positive thinking. I've tried positive thinking. I've tried affirmations. I wrote things on sticky notes and put them on my mirror, and nothing changed. I understand that frustration. I truly do. But here's what most people miss. There's a world of difference between merely repeating words and actually impressing a belief upon your subconscious mind. You see, your subconscious doesn't respond to words alone. It responds to words mixed with feeling, with emotion, with the conviction that what you're affirming is already true in the invisible realm of mind. Think of it this way. If I ask you to say, I am wealthy 10 times right now, you can do that. You can move your lips and make the sounds. But if while you're saying those words, your dominant feeling is one of lack, if you're thinking about the bills piling up on your kitchen table, if you're feeling that familiar knot of anxiety in your stomach about money, then you're not impressing wealth upon your subconscious. You're actually reinforcing poverty. The feeling is the secret. The feeling is what carries the thought deep into the subconscious mind where it can take root and grow. This is why I always say, you must feel the reality of your desire. You must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When you think about your goal, whatever it may be, you need to generate within yourself the exact emotional state you would experience if that goal were already accomplished. If you want health, you must feel healthy. If you want prosperity, you must feel prosperous. If you want love, you must feel loved. Now, I know this can seem difficult at first. How do you feel wealthy when your bank account says otherwise? How do you feel healthy when your body is giving you symptoms? This is where the practice comes in, where the discipline of mental training becomes essential. You must learn to withdraw your attention from the current external facts and place it instead on the invisible reality you're creating in consciousness. Let me share something with you that might make this clearer. Your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one that you vividly imagine with emotional intensity. This has been proven time and time again. When you imagine something with all your senses engaged, when you make it real in your mind's eye and feel it in your body, your subconscious accepts it as fact. And whatever your subconscious accepts as fact, it begins to externalize in your world. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, well, that's not really true, or you're just making this up. It accepts the images and feelings you consistently impress upon it, and then it gets to work making them manifest in your external reality. Think about the placebo effect for a moment. Scientists give patients sugar pills, completely inert, no medicinal value whatsoever, but they tell these patients, this is a powerful medication that will reduce your pain, improve your condition, heal your symptoms. And what happens? A significant percentage of these patients actually get better. Their pain decreases. Their symptoms improve. Sometimes dramatically. How is this possible? The pill had no active ingredient. The healing didn't come from chemistry. It came from belief. It came from the subconscious mind accepting an idea as true and then reorganizing the body's systems to match that belief. Your subconscious mind controls your autonomic nervous system, your immune function, your cellular repair mechanisms, your hormonal balance. When you deeply believe something about your health, your subconscious adjusts all these systems accordingly. This isn't mysticism. This is documented, observable science. And if your subconscious can heal your body based on belief, imagine what it can do for your circumstances, your relationships, your financial situation, your career. The same principle applies to every area of your life. I want you to understand something profound here. You are not trying to force anything to happen. You're not trying to manipulate reality through sheer willpower. That's exhausting, and it doesn't work. Instead, you're impressing an idea so deeply into your subconscious mind that it becomes your dominant mental attitude. And your dominant mental attitude always externalizes as your life experience. This is why affirmations alone often fail. You can repeat, I am wealthy 1,000 times, but if underneath those words you're feeling anxious about money, if you're imagining your bank account empty, if you're worrying about bills, then your subconscious is receiving a completely different message. Your subconscious doesn't hear your words. It feels your conviction. It reads the emotional signature behind every thought. This is why a person who quietly assumes they are successful, who feels it natural and normal to prosper, will manifest wealth far more easily than someone who desperately affirms it while drowning in doubt. Let me share something that changed everything for a man I once counseled. He came to me frustrated, exhausted from years of affirmations that seemed to produce nothing. He'd been saying I am confident every morning for 3 years, yet he still trembled before job interviews, still avoided social situations, still felt that familiar knot of anxiety in his chest whenever he had to speak up. I asked him a simple question. When you say, I am confident, what do you feel? He paused, then admitted, I feel like a liar. There it was. The truth his subconscious had been absorbing all along. Not the words, I am confident, but the feeling, I am a liar pretending to be confident. Can you see the difference? His subconscious was faithfully reproducing exactly what he was impressing upon it. More pretending, more anxiety, more evidence that he wasn't confident. So we changed his approach entirely. Instead of affirming what he didn't believe, we began with what he could accept. We started with, I am becoming more comfortable in my own skin. That felt true to him. He could believe it. Then, confidence is natural to me, not claiming he had it fully but affirming its rightful place in his nature. But here's what really shifted everything. We focused on feeling. Before sleep each night, he would recall a single moment from his past when he had felt genuinely confident. Maybe it was explaining something he knew well to a friend. Maybe it was that time he stood up for someone. just one real memory. He would relive that moment in detail, feeling again what confidence actually felt like in his body. The steadiness, the calm, the quiet certainty. He impressed that feeling onto his subconscious, night after night, and then he stopped praying for a parking space. Instead, he thanked his subconscious for always guiding him to the perfect spot at the perfect time. He simply assumed it was done. And you know what happened? The parking spaces appeared, consistently, almost absurdly so. Now, I'm not suggesting that God cares about your parking convenience. That's not the point. The point is this. Asterisk, asterisk, when you stop begging and start believing, you change the frequency you're broadcasting. Asterisk, asterisk. You move from anxiety to acceptance, from hoping to knowing. This is what I mean by impressing the subconscious. It's not about repetition for repetition's sake. It's about repetition with feeling, with conviction, until the new assumption becomes more real to you than your current circumstances. Let me give you another example, one that hits closer to home for most people. There was a woman who came to one of my lectures years ago. She was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out. Creditors calling. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the numbers red, angry, accusing. I asked her a simple question. What would it feel like if you were debt-free right now? She looked at me like I was insane. Dr. Murphy, she said, I owe $17,000. I don't have time for fantasy. That's exactly your problem. I told her, you're spending every waking moment impressing poverty onto your subconscious. You're praying to the god of debt. You're worshiping your bills. She didn't like that, but she listened. I instructed her to do this. Every night before sleep, sit quietly. Close your eyes. Imagine opening your banking statement and seeing a balance that brings you peace. Don't force a specific number. Just feel the relief, the freedom, the lightness in your chest. Then whisper, thank you. I am free from all financial burden. My subconscious mind reveals to me the perfect way. 3 months later, she wrote to me. She didn't win the lottery. She didn't receive an inheritance. What happened was far more interesting. She got an idea, a clear, persistent idea to sell handmade items she'd been creating as a hobby. She started small. Within weeks, orders flooded in. Within 2 months, she'd paid off half her debt. Within 6, it was gone. Where did the idea come from? She asked me. I smiled. It was always there. You were just too busy worrying to hear it. You see, your subconscious mind is infinitely intelligent. It knows the way, but it can only work with the material you give it. If you feed it fear, it produces fearful outcomes. If you feed it faith, it produces miraculous solutions. This is not magic. This is law. Mental law. As precise as gravity. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't debate. It doesn't say, are you sure about that? It simply accepts. It takes the impress of your habitual thinking and brings it forth into your experience. Think of it this way. If you constantly say, I can't afford that, your subconscious accepts this as an instruction. It will then work tirelessly to make sure you can't afford it. It will arrange circumstances, influence your decisions, direct your attention away from opportunities, all to prove you right. But here's what most people miss. Your subconscious is just as willing to make you rich as it is to keep you poor. It has no preference. It has no opinion about what's better for you. It simply responds to the dominant impression you give it. I've seen this countless times. A person comes to me and says, Dr. Murphy, I affirm abundance every morning, but nothing changes. So I ask them, what do you think about the rest of the day? And then the truth comes out. They affirm for 5 minutes and worry for 5 hours. They declare prosperity in the morning and complain about their bills all afternoon. Which impression is stronger? Which one is the subconscious actually receiving? You see, it's not about the words you speak. It's about the feeling behind them. It's about the mental acceptance, the inner agreement. You can say, I am wealthy 1,000 times, but if you feel poor while you're saying it, you're impressing poverty, not wealth. The subconscious responds to feeling, to conviction, to the state of consciousness you occupy most consistently. This is why I teach people to enter into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Don't just say the words, feel them, live in them. Let your imagination create the experience so vividly that your subconscious cannot tell the difference between the imagined state and reality. Because to your subconscious, there is no difference. When you imagine something with feeling, with sensory vividness, with emotional involvement, your subconscious accepts it as real. And once it accepts it as real, it begins to manifest it in your outer world. This is not fantasy. This is not daydreaming. This is scientific use of the greatest power you possess, the power of mental imaging combined with feeling. Let me give you a specific example. A woman I worked with wanted to heal her relationship with her daughter. Years of misunderstanding had built a wall between them. She came to me asking what to do. I told her, stop rehashing the past. Stop remembering the arguments. Instead, every night before sleep, imagine a conversation with your daughter filled with warmth and love. Hear her voice. Feel the embrace. Experience the reconciliation in your imagination as though it's happening now. She did this faithfully. Within 3 weeks, she received a letter from her daughter. The letter was warm, affectionate, filled with the very words she had been imagining. The reconciliation followed naturally, effortlessly, as though the universe had simply been waiting for her to accept what was already hers in consciousness. This is the pattern you must understand. The outer world is perpetually reflecting your inner convictions. When you change the inner, the outer must follow. It has no choice. It is law. Now, let me address something that troubles many people who come to this understanding. They ask, Dr. Murphy, how long must I persist? How many times must I repeat my mental work before I see results? And I tell them what I'm telling you now. You persist until you feel it real. You persist until the feeling of naturalness comes. You persist until what you're imagining feels more real than what your senses are reporting. This isn't about mechanical repetition. This isn't about saying affirmations like a parrot until you're exhausted. This is about saturating your consciousness with a new conviction. It's about dwelling in the feeling until it becomes your natural state. Think of it like learning to drive. At first, every action requires conscious thought. You think about the steering wheel, the pedals, the mirrors, but with repetition, it becomes second nature. You drive without thinking. Your hands and feet move automatically. The skill has become absorbed into your subconscious. The same principle applies here. At first, thinking from your wish fulfilled requires effort. Your old assumptions keep pulling you back. Doubt creeps in. The evidence of your senses contradicts your new conviction. But as you persist, something shifts. The new assumption begins to feel natural. You catch yourself thinking from it automatically. The old patterns lose their grip. And suddenly, without strain or effort, you're living in the reality you once only imagined. I've seen this happen countless times. A man who persistently imagined himself successful eventually stopped being able to imagine himself as a failure. A woman who faithfully felt herself loved could no longer accept the feeling of being unwanted. The new state became their natural dwelling place. This is your goal. Not to force anything, not to make anything happen through willpower, but to so completely accept your desire and consciousness that it becomes your automatic assumption about yourself. This is the secret that most people miss entirely. They think manifestation is about doing more, trying harder, pushing against resistance. But it's the exact opposite. It's about becoming so identified with your wish fulfilled that no effort is required at all. Think about how you relate to any fact about yourself that you completely accept. You don't have to remind yourself of your name. You don't wake up each morning and affirm, I am John or I am Mary. You don't visualize yourself having that name. You don't create vision boards to convince yourself it's true. You simply are that person, and the entire world reflects this assumption back to you without question. This is precisely how you must relate to your desire. When you truly assume you already are what you wish to be, you stop chasing it. You stop looking for evidence. You stop questioning when or how it will arrive, because in consciousness, it has already arrived, and consciousness is the only reality. I've watched people exhaust themselves with techniques, spending hours each day visualizing, affirming, scripting, trying desperately to manifest their desires, and yet nothing changes. Do you know why? Because underneath all that doing, their fundamental assumption remains unchanged. They are still assuming they don't have it, and that's why they're working so hard to get it. The person who already has what they want doesn't need to work for it. They simply live from that state. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you desire financial abundance. Most people approach this by affirming "I am wealthy" while feeling poor. They visualize money while worrying about bills. They're trying to get from poverty to wealth, and that gap is maintained in every technique they practice. But imagine instead that you quietly, privately, in the secret chamber of your own consciousness, accept as fact that you are financially secure. Not that you will be someday, not that you're trying to become it, but that you simply are financially secure right now. What would change about how you think, how you walk, how you make decisions, how you speak about your future? You wouldn't be desperate, you wouldn't be anxious, you wouldn't be constantly checking your bank account with fear. You would move through the world with a quiet confidence, making choices from abundance rather than lack. And here's what happens. The world, which is nothing but a mirror of your inner assumptions, begins to reshape itself to match this new state. Opportunities you couldn't have predicted appear. Money comes from unexpected sources. People treat you differently because you're radiating a different frequency entirely. This isn't magic, this is law, this is how consciousness operates. You see, your subconscious mind is like a faithful servant. It doesn't argue with you, it doesn't question your beliefs. It simply accepts what you impress upon it and brings it forth into your experience. If you constantly say, "I can't afford this," your subconscious says, "Yes, master, you're right. Let me show you more evidence of lack." If you say, "Money comes to me easily and naturally," your subconscious responds, "Certainly, let me arrange circumstances to make this true." This is why I've seen people turn their entire financial situation around, not by working harder, not by getting another degree, but by changing the conversation they're having with themselves. I knew a woman who was drowning in debt. She came to me desperate, afraid, convinced she'd never be free. I told her what I'm telling you now. Stop fighting the debt. Stop giving it your emotional energy. Instead, begin to feel the relief of financial freedom. Begin to see yourself as prosperous. She resisted at first. "But Dr. Murphy," she said, "I owe thousands. How can I pretend it's not there?" I explained that she wasn't pretending anything away. She was shifting her creative focus. Every moment she spent in worry was a moment spent creating more of what she feared. She began, reluctantly at first, to spend 10 minutes each night before sleep feeling grateful for financial abundance. She imagined the feeling of being debt-free. She gave thanks for money flowing into her life. Within 3 months, things began to shift. An unexpected promotion, a forgotten tax refund, a creative idea that brought in additional income. Within 18 months, she was completely out of debt. Did the universe magically drop money in her lap? No. Her shift in consciousness opened her eyes to opportunities that had always been there. It gave her the courage to act in ways she'd been too fearful to act before. Her outer world rearranged itself to match her inner conviction. This is what I mean when I say you must become a match for what you desire. You cannot hold the consciousness of poverty and expect to experience wealth. You cannot hold the consciousness of sickness and expect to experience health. Your outer world is always a perfect reflection of your inner world. And this is why so many people struggle. They try to change their circumstances while maintaining the same consciousness that created those circumstances in the first place. They want more money, but they think poor thoughts. They want better health, but they dwell on illness. They want loving relationships, but they harbor resentment and bitterness. It's like planting apple seeds and expecting orange trees. The universe doesn't work that way. The law is exact, mathematical, impersonal. Now, you might say, "But I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be poor." Doesn't that count for something? And here's what you must understand. Wanting is not the same as consciousness. When you say, "I want to be healthy," you're actually affirming the current state of lacking health. You're emphasizing what you don't have, and that becomes your dominant mental pattern. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you accept as true. It responds to the feeling, the assumption, the state of consciousness you habitually occupy. This is the secret that changes everything. You don't create wealth by wanting it. You create wealth by accepting it as already yours in consciousness. You don't create health by wishing for it. You create health by assuming the feeling of already being well. Listen carefully to what I'm saying. Your work is not in the outer world. Your work is in consciousness. When you change your consciousness, The outer world must change to match it. This is law. This is principle. This is how creation works. I've seen it happen thousands of times. A person comes to me burdened by debt, worried about bills, anxious about survival, and they say, "Dr. Murphy, please help me manifest money." But when I examine their consciousness, what do I find? Morning, noon, and night, they're thinking about lack. They're feeling poor. They're imagining disaster. They're speaking words of limitation. And then they wonder why the money doesn't come. The universe cannot give you what contradicts your consciousness. It's not a matter of deserving or not deserving. It's not about punishment or reward. It's simply law, operating exactly as it should. Now, here's where this understanding becomes incredibly practical. When you recognize that your subconscious mind operates by law, not by whim, not by mood, not by circumstance, you stop treating it like you're making wishes and hoping they come true. You start treating it like the precise instrument it actually is. Think of it this way. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't stand over it arguing with the soil. You don't beg the earth to please. If it's not too much trouble, maybe grow this seed. You don't worry that you're not worthy of a tomato plant. You simply plant the seed, water it, give it sunlight, and trust the process. The soil doesn't ask questions. It doesn't judge your past. It doesn't care if you failed at gardening before. It just does what soil does. It accepts the seed and begins the process of growth. Your subconscious mind works exactly the same way. It's the soil. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your mental images, these are the seeds. Plant seeds of success, and success must grow. Plant seeds of limitation, and limitation must grow. The soil doesn't discriminate. It just grows whatever you plant. But here's what most people do. They plant seeds of doubt while hoping for flowers of confidence. They plant seeds of fear while praying for crops of courage. They plant seeds of poverty, consciousness, while wondering why abundance never shows up. And then they blame the soil. They blame God. They blame the universe. They blame their circumstances. The soil isn't the problem. The seeds are the problem. I've worked with countless individuals who came to me frustrated, bewildered, even angry. I've tried affirmations. They tell me. I've tried visualization. I've tried positive thinking. Nothing works. And when I sit with them, when I really listen to what's going on beneath the surface, I always discover the same thing. They're planting two kinds of seeds simultaneously. They're affirming abundance for 5 minutes in the morning, and then spending the entire day ruminating on lack. They're visualizing health while constantly fearing disease. They're declaring confidence while replaying every past failure in vivid detail. You cannot plant weeds and harvest wheat. You cannot impress your subconscious mind with fear and expect it to manifest courage. The law doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. The law is impersonal, consistent, and absolute. Think of electricity. When you flip a light switch, does the electricity stop to ask whether you're a good person? Does it check your bank account, your past mistakes, your worthiness? Of course not. If the circuit is complete, the light comes on. Every time. For everyone. The same principle applies to your subconscious mind. It doesn't judge your desires. It doesn't evaluate whether you deserve them. It simply accepts what you impress upon it and works to bring it into your experience. I've seen people sabotage themselves for years because they believed they weren't worthy of success. They'd visualize, they'd affirm, they'd do all the techniques, but underneath it all, there was this persistent whisper, "Who am I to have this? I don't deserve it." And you know what happened? They were right. Not because the universe agreed with them, but because they impressed that belief into their subconscious mind, and their subconscious faithfully reproduced it in their circumstances. The law gave them exactly what they believed. Here's what you need to understand. Your subconscious doesn't care about your self-esteem issues. It doesn't participate in your inner dialogue about worthiness. It's like soil, it will grow whatever seed you plant. Wheat or weeds, roses or thorns. The soil doesn't discriminate. So when you say, "I want wealth, but I don't deserve it," you're planting two contradictory seeds. And guess which one usually has the stronger emotional charge? The one rooted in fear, in old conditioning, in that childhood voice that told you to stay small. The subconscious responds to feeling. If your desire feels like a fantasy, something nice but impossible, it won't manifest. But if your sense of unworthiness feels real, visceral, true, that will manifest with absolute precision. This is why I keep emphasizing the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You must cultivate the feeling that it's already done, that you already are the person who has this thing, who lives this life. Not because you're trying to trick the universe, but because that feeling is the language your subconscious understands. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you're not asking for permission. You're not pleading your case. You're simply occupying the state of consciousness that corresponds to your desire, and the law, impersonal, consistent, absolute, must reflect it back to you. This is why the great mystics and teachers throughout history have emphasized feeling above all else. They understood that consciousness is the only reality, and that feeling is the secret, the bridge between the invisible world of thought and the visible world of form. You see, most people live their entire lives in a state of perpetual wanting. They look at their bank account and feel lack. They look at their body and feel dissatisfaction. They look at their relationships and feel loneliness. And what does this constant feeling of lack produce? More circumstances that generate those exact same feelings. It's a vicious cycle, and it repeats endlessly until you understand the principle at work. The moment you change the feeling, you change the reality. Not tomorrow, not after you see the evidence. Now, in this very moment, I want you to understand something profound. Your desire already exists. It's not something you need to create or earn or deserve. It exists right now in the invisible realm of consciousness, waiting for you to claim it through the assumption of the wish fulfilled. Think of a seed buried in the ground. The oak tree already exists within that seed. It's not a hope or a dream, it's a certainty encoded in the very nature of the seed itself. When the conditions are right, the tree must emerge. It has no choice. It's law. Your desire is the seed. Your assumption, your persistent feeling of the wish fulfilled is the soil, the water, the sunlight. When you maintain that assumption, the manifestation must come forth. It cannot do otherwise. But here's where so many people stumble. They plant the seed, and then they dig it up every day to see if it's growing. They assume the feeling for a moment, then immediately return to doubt. They affirm their desire in the morning, then spend the rest of the day affirming its absence through their emotional reactions to current circumstances. This is not how the law works. You must remain faithful to your assumption. You must live from the end, not toward it. There's a monumental difference between these two approaches. Living toward the end means you're still in pursuit. You're still chasing. You're still in the energy of lack and separation from your desire. Living from the end means you've already arrived. The inner work is done. You're simply allowing the outer world time to catch up with the inner shift you've already made. Now, many people ask me, Dr. Murphy, how long will this take? When will my desire manifest? And I tell them this question itself reveals doubt. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You water it, you trust the process. You know that nature has its own timing. Your subconscious mind works the same way. The time between your mental acceptance and physical manifestation varies. Sometimes it's immediate. I've seen people transform their circumstances overnight once they truly accepted their new state. Other times, there's a gestation period. This doesn't mean the law isn't working, it means the conditions are being arranged, people are being moved into position, circumstances are aligning behind the scenes. Your job isn't to concern yourself with the how or the when. Your job is to remain faithful to the state you've assumed. This is where most people fail. They do the technique once, maybe twice, and then spend the rest of their day contradicting it with worry, doubt, and negative conversation. It's like taking one step forward and 10 steps back. Think of yourself as a gardener of consciousness. You've planted the seed, the desired state you've imagined. Now you must tend the garden. This means you pull the weeds of doubt when they appear. You don't give them water and sunlight by dwelling on them. When a fearful thought arises, you don't fight it, you simply redirect your attention back to your desired state. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't affirmations repeated mindlessly. This is living in the consciousness of your wish fulfilled. There's a tremendous difference. Positive thinking says, I hope this works, I'm trying to be optimistic. Living in the end says, it is already done. I've watched people transform terminal diagnoses, resurrect failing businesses, and attract perfect partners, not through struggle, not through manipulation, but through this simple yet profound shift in consciousness. They stopped living from their current circumstances and started living from their desired end. They made it real in imagination first, and then inevitably the outer world conformed. The universe is a mirror, reflecting back to you the state of consciousness you're holding within. Change the inner, and the outer must follow. This is law. This is principle. This is how creation works. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You don't stand over it with doubt, saying, I wonder if this will work. No. You plant it, you water it, and you trust the intelligence of nature to do its work. You know that, beneath the surface, invisible processes are taking place. Roots are forming. Life is organizing itself. And in time and the perfect time, the seed breaks through the soil and becomes the plant it was always meant to be. Your subconscious mind works the same way. When you plant a desire, an intention, a mental image into your subconscious through feeling and acceptance, you must leave it alone. You must trust the process. You cannot keep digging it up with doubt, worry, and fear. You cannot keep asking, when will it happen? How will it happen? What if it doesn't happen? Every time you do that, you're withdrawing your faith, you're uprooting the seed before it has a chance to grow. The waiting period is not a time of inactivity. It's a time of gestation. Just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, the opposite is true. The moment you truly accept your desire as already fulfilled in consciousness, forces beyond your comprehension begin to move. Circumstances rearrange themselves. People you've never met start thinking of you. Opportunities that didn't exist suddenly appear. All of this happens beneath the surface of your awareness, orchestrated by the infinite intelligence of your subconscious mind. I've seen this happen thousands of times. A woman comes to me and says, I've been affirming for 3 weeks and nothing has changed. 3 weeks. As if the universe operates on her schedule. As if her entire life pattern can be rewritten in 21 days simply because she's impatient. I tell her what I'm telling you now. Time is not the issue. Acceptance is the issue. If you truly accepted it, you wouldn't be counting the days. You wouldn't be looking for evidence. You'd be living from the end, feeling the reality of your desire now, and letting the outer world catch up in its own time. This is where most people fail. They do the technique once, twice, maybe a week, then they look around and say, see, it didn't work. But they never really believed it in the first place. They were testing it, not trusting it. And you cannot test a law and expect it to reward you. You must use it with conviction. You see, the subconscious mind doesn't respond to your doubt. It doesn't care about your skepticism. It only responds to the feeling of reality that you impress upon it. When you test something, you're holding it at arm's length. You're saying, show me first, and then I'll believe. But that's backwards. That's completely backwards. I want you to understand something fundamental about how this works. Your subconscious mind is like the soil in your garden. The soil doesn't judge the seed you plant. It doesn't say, well, I'll wait and see if this is a good seed before I grow it. No. The soil accepts every seed equally and begins to grow whatever you've planted. If you plant thorns, you get thorns. If you plant roses, you get roses. The soil is neutral, impersonal, and completely receptive. Your subconscious mind works the same way. It doesn't question whether you deserve what you're imagining. It doesn't debate whether it's possible or impossible. It simply accepts the impression you give it and begins to make it real in your experience. This is why testing never works. When you test, you're planting seeds of doubt, and doubt grows just as surely as faith does. I'll tell you something else. Many people come to this teaching looking for a guarantee. They want insurance. They want proof before they commit. But life doesn't work that way. You cannot stand at the edge of the water waiting for all the currents to stop before you step in. You have to move with faith, not after proof. There was a man who came to me once, desperate for employment. He had been out of work for months, and his family was suffering. I taught him the principle. Assume the feeling of already having the ideal job. Go to sleep every night feeling grateful, feeling employed, feeling secure. But he couldn't do it. Every time he tried, his mind would interrupt with, but where's the job? Show me the job first. He was demanding that the bridge appear before he took the first step. Finally, I said to him, you're treating your imagination like a servant that must prove itself worthy of your trust. But your imagination is the master, and you must trust it first. That hit him. Something shifted. That very night, he imagined differently. He didn't ask for proof. He didn't test. He simply felt the reality of being employed, and he fell asleep in that feeling. Within 1 week, an opportunity came that he never could have predicted, but it came only after he stopped testing and started trusting. This is the difference between those who succeed with this law and those who don't. The ones who succeed give themselves fully to the assumption. They don't peek behind the curtain to see if it's working. They live in the end. They don't test it. They don't perform experiments with one foot out the door, ready to say, I knew it wouldn't work. They burn the ships. They commit entirely. I've watched people fail not because the law failed them, but because they failed the law. They wanted proof before belief. They wanted evidence before faith. But that's not how creation works. Creation moves from the invisible to the visible, not the other way around. You are not waiting for your desire to prove itself to you. Your desire is waiting for you to prove yourself to it. It's waiting for you to become the person who already has it. It's waiting for you to stop begging and start being. Let me tell you about a woman who understood this completely. She wanted to be married, not just to anyone, but to a specific kind of man. A man of character, of warmth, of success. For years, she had dated men who disappointed her. Men who were unavailable, uncommitted, wrong for her in every way. Then she learned this principle. And instead of continuing to live from her current reality of loneliness, she began to live from her desired reality of marriage. Every night before sleep, she would feel the wedding ring on her finger. Not imagine it, feel it. She would turn it around her finger, feel its weight, its smoothness, its reality. She didn't do this and then spend her days complaining about being single. She didn't tell her friends, I'm so alone, but I'm trying this weird mental thing at night. No, she lived as a woman who was about to be married. She prepared her home, she made space in her closet, she acted from the end. And I want you to understand something crucial here. This wasn't delusion, this wasn't pretending, this was assumption. There's a vast difference between pretending and assuming. When you pretend, you know it's not real. You're playing a game. But when you assume, you accept it as real. You act from it, not toward it. Within months, she met her husband. Not through desperate searching, not through anxiety-driven dating apps, but through a natural series of events that seemed almost orchestrated. And to her, they were orchestrated by her own consciousness, which had already accepted the marriage as real. This is what I mean when I say you must live in the end. The end is not some distant future point. The end is now. The end is the acceptance of the wish fulfilled. When you live there, when you make your home there, the physical world has no choice but to conform. This is why you must be vigilant about what you accept as true. The world will constantly present you with evidence that contradicts your desire. It will show you the bank account that says you're poor. It will show you the empty bed that says you're alone. It will show you the diagnosis that says you're sick. And if you accept these facts as final, if you bow down to them and say, yes, this is reality, this is what I must live with, then you have chosen your end. You have selected your destination, and the bridge of incidents will simply lead you back to where you already are. But here's what most people don't understand. Those facts are not final. They are echoes of yesterday's consciousness. They are the fruit of seeds you planted in the past, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps out of fear or habit. The circumstances you see today were created by the thoughts you accepted as true weeks, months, or even years ago. They are evidence of where you've been, not where you're going. When you decide on a new end, when you claim a new assumption as true, you are planting new seeds. And yes, for a while, you may still see the old harvest. The bank account doesn't change overnight. The relationship doesn't appear instantly. The body doesn't heal in a single moment. But this delay, this gap between assumption and manifestation is not evidence that the law isn't working. It's simply the natural lag between cause and effect, between seed and harvest. The weak give up here. They assume for a day, maybe a week, and when nothing changes, they throw up their hands and say, see, it doesn't work. The law is nonsense. I'm stuck with what I have. But the wise, the persistent, the faithful, they understand that persistence is everything. They know that the seed is germinating beneath the soil, invisible to the eye but very much alive. They continue to live from the end, to feel the wish fulfilled, even when the external world screams the opposite. I once knew a man who wanted desperately to own his own business. For years, he had worked for others, watched others build empires while he remained an employee. He came to me frustrated, defeated, ready to give up on his dream. I asked him, what would it feel like if you already owned that business? He closed his eyes, and for the first time, he allowed himself to truly feel it. The pride, the freedom, the satisfaction of making decisions, of building something that was his. I told him, go back to that feeling every single day, live in it, make it your home. And he did. Within 6 months, his business turned around. Within a year, he doubled his revenue. But more importantly, he told me something I'll never forget. He said, Dr. Murphy, the money came, but what really changed was me. I stopped being afraid of my own life. That's what happens when you dare to feel before you see. Now, let me address something that troubles many people. They say, but Dr. Murphy, isn't it dishonest to feel wealthy when I'm not? Isn't that lying to myself? And I tell them what I'm telling you now. You're not lying. You're choosing which truth to align with. Right now, in this very moment, two realities exist simultaneously. In one reality, you are limited by your current circumstances. In the other, you are the person you wish to become, living the life you desire. Both are real. Both are available. The question is simply this: which one are you feeding with your attention? Your feeling is the food. Your attention is the water. Whatever you nourish will grow. I'm not asking you to deny your current circumstances. I'm asking you to stop giving them all your emotional energy. Acknowledge them, yes, but don't marry them. Don't build your identity around what is when you could be building it around what can be. Here's a technique I've shared with thousands, and it works without fail if you apply it faithfully. Every night before sleep, sit quietly for 10 minutes. Close your eyes. Now, ask yourself this question: how would I feel if my desire were already fulfilled? Don't think about it. Feel into it. Let the feeling arise naturally. Maybe it's relief. Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's a deep, quiet peace. Maybe it's excitement. Whatever it is, don't force it. Just allow it. Once you find that feeling, rest in it. Breathe with it. Let it fill your chest, your belly, your limbs. Let it become the last thing you feel before you drift into sleep. Why before sleep? Because as you fall asleep, your conscious mind releases its grip, and your subconscious mind becomes most receptive. The feeling you fall asleep in is the seed you plant in the fertile soil of your deeper mind. Do this every night for 30 days. Just 30 days. Don't judge it. Don't analyze it. Don't check every morning to see if it's working. Just do it faithfully, as an act of devotion to your own potential, and watch what happens. Let me tell you about a woman I knew who tried to affirm her way into prosperity while simultaneously telling everyone who would listen how broke she was. She'd spend 10 minutes in the morning declaring, I am wealthy, and then spend the rest of the day complaining about bills, obsessing over her bank balance, and feeling resentful every time she had to spend money on necessities. What do you think her subconscious heard? Not the morning affirmations. It heard the emotional truth she lived in all day long. It heard the fear, the resentment, the constant mental rehearsal of lack, and it faithfully reproduced exactly what she was impressing upon it through feeling. Your subconscious doesn't respond to words. It responds to the feeling tone behind the words. You can say, I am confident 1,000 times, but if you're feeling anxious and inadequate while you're saying it, you're actually affirming anxiety and inadequacy. The words are meaningless. The feeling is everything. This is why I always emphasize, better to spend 5 minutes genuinely feeling wealthy than 5 hours affirming wealth while feeling poor. Better to have 1 moment of authentic gratitude than 100 mechanical repetitions of thank you. Your subconscious knows the difference between genuine feeling and performance. It always knows. And here's something else most people miss. Your subconscious is always recording. Always. It doesn't take breaks. It doesn't have office hours. Every thought you think, every feeling you feel, every mental image you entertain, it's all being recorded, impressed, and eventually expressed in your experience. This means that what you do between your formal prayer sessions matters enormously. In fact, it matters more than the sessions themselves. If you spend 20 minutes in prayer, affirming health, and then spend 12 hours worrying about symptoms, which do you think wins? The worry wins. Not because it's more powerful, but because you gave it more time, more attention, more emotional energy. This is why I tell people, you cannot dip your toe in this work. You cannot pray for wealth while secretly believing rich people are greedy. You cannot affirm love while holding on to bitterness. You cannot seek healing while identifying as a sick person. The subconscious mind does not respond to your words alone. It responds to the emotional conviction behind those words. Let me share something that transformed my own understanding. Years ago, I worked with a woman who had been praying for financial freedom for over a decade. She did everything right on the surface. She tithed, she affirmed, she visualized. And yet, nothing changed. When I sat with her and we went deeper, I discovered something revealing. Every time she saw someone wealthy, she would think, must be nice. Some people have all the luck. Every time she spent money, even on necessities, she felt a pang of fear. Every time an unexpected bill arrived, she would say, "See, I knew it. Money always slips away from me." She was praying for 15 minutes each morning, but programming poverty for 15 hours each day. And she wondered why her circumstances never shifted. I told her what I'm telling you now. You must become a guardian of your inner world. You must monitor what you allow into the temple of your subconscious mind. This doesn't mean you become rigid or fearful. It means you become intentional. When a negative thought arises, you don't fight it. You simply refuse to energize it. You redirect your attention. You return to your desired state. This is not repression. Repression is pushing something down while still believing in its power. What I'm describing is recognition. You recognize the negative thought as nothing more than an old pattern, a ghost from your past conditioning. And you choose, consciously and deliberately, to withdraw your attention from it. You redirect your mental energy toward the thought of what you truly want. You replace the image of failure with the image of success. You replace the feeling of lack with the feeling of abundance. You replace the voice of doubt with the voice of faith. This isn't suppression. Suppression is pushing something down while it still has power over you. This is displacement. You're allowing the negative thought to dissolve naturally as you give your full attention to something higher, something better, something that serves your true purpose. Think of it like tuning a radio. When you're hearing static and interference, you don't fight with the static. You simply turn the dial until you find a clear signal. The static doesn't go anywhere, you've simply shifted your frequency. You've changed what you're tuned into. Your subconscious mind works on the same principle. Whatever station you tune into most consistently becomes your dominant mental atmosphere, and your dominant mental atmosphere becomes your lived experience. Now, I want you to understand something crucial. This process requires vigilance, especially in the beginning. Your old thought patterns have momentum. They've been running for years, perhaps decades. They won't disappear overnight simply because you've decided to think differently. You'll find that certain negative thoughts return again and again, like uninvited guests who don't understand they're no longer welcome. The thought of inadequacy, the fear of rejection, the belief that you're somehow fundamentally flawed or unworthy. When these thoughts return, and they will, don't be discouraged. Don't interpret their return as evidence that this process isn't working. Their return is simply evidence that you're human, that you're engaged in the sacred work of transformation. Each time a negative thought returns, you have another opportunity to practice, another opportunity to recognize, to choose, to redirect. With each repetition, you strengthen the new neural pathway. You make the positive thought pattern more automatic, more natural, more dominant. I've watched people transform their entire lives through this practice. I've seen individuals who were consumed by anxiety become pillars of peace. I've witnessed those who believed themselves to be failures achieve extraordinary success. The change didn't happen because their circumstances improved first. The change happened because they changed their mental diet, and their circumstances followed accordingly. One woman who attended my lectures was terrified of public speaking. The very thought of standing before a group would trigger panic attacks. Her subconscious had accepted the belief that speaking publicly meant humiliation and rejection. I gave her a simple technique. Every night before sleep, she would visualize herself speaking confidently before an audience. She would see herself smiling, making eye contact, speaking with clarity and conviction. She would hear the applause. She would feel the warmth of appreciation from her listeners. For 30 days, she practiced this mental rehearsal. She never forced it. She never struggled with it. She simply impressed upon her subconscious, during that drowsy state before sleep, the image of herself as a confident, capable speaker. The transformation was remarkable. When the opportunity came to present at her company meeting, she walked to the front of the room with surprising calm. Her voice was steady. Her thoughts were clear. Afterward, she told me, it felt like I had done it 1,000 times before. And in a sense, she had. Her subconscious mind made no distinction between her mental rehearsals and actual experience. This is the power of mental equivalence. Your subconscious mind will produce in your outer world what you consistently impress upon it through thought, feeling, and imagination. Now, some of you might be thinking, this sounds too simple. Surely changing my life requires more effort, more struggle, more sacrifice. But this perspective itself reveals a misunderstanding about how your mind works. Your subconscious mind responds to the law of least effort. It seeks the path of natural expression. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every day to check its progress. You don't strain and struggle to make it grow. You simply provide the right conditions, water, sunlight, and soil, and the seed grows according to its nature. Your desires are seeds. Your subconscious mind is the soil. Your thoughts and feelings are the water and sunlight. Growth happens naturally when you provide the right mental and emotional conditions. The struggle comes not from creation, but from resistance. When you doubt, worry, and contradict your own desires with negative thinking, you create internal conflict. You're essentially planting seeds and then immediately pouring poison on them. I once counseled a businessman who worked 18-hour days, convinced that success required endless toil and sacrifice. Despite his tremendous effort, his business struggled. He was exhausted, stressed, and on the verge of collapse. I taught him a simple truth. Asterisk. Success is not about how hard you work, but about the consciousness you work from. Asterisk. I guided him to begin each day with prayer and meditation, affirming, divine intelligence guides my business. Infinite wisdom flows through me. I work in harmony with the creative power of the universe. Within weeks, everything changed. Not because he worked harder, in fact, he worked less. But he worked times differently. Asterisk. Ideas came to him effortlessly. He made decisions with clarity and confidence. Opportunities appeared that he had been too stressed and scattered to notice before. His business didn't just stabilize, it flourished. This is the paradox that confounds the material mind. Asterisk. Less effort, more results. Asterisk. When you align yourself with the spiritual laws of the universe, you stop pushing against life and start flowing with it. You stop trying to force outcomes and start allowing them to unfold naturally. Consider the farmer. Does he pull on the seedlings to make them grow faster? Does he dig up the seeds each day to check their progress? Of course not. He plants the seed, waters it, provides the right conditions, and then trusts the natural process. Asterisk. He cooperates with nature's laws, and nature does the rest. Your subconscious mind works exactly the same way. Plant your desire clearly and with feeling. Nourish it with faith and positive expectation. Create the right mental and emotional conditions. Then let it be. Asterisk. Trust the process. The universe is always working on your behalf, even when you cannot see the evidence. I want to share with you now one of the most powerful techniques I've ever taught. I call it the law of reciprocity. This universal principle states that what you give out mentally and emotionally, you receive back in your experience. If you radiate love, you receive love. If you radiate prosperity consciousness, you receive prosperity. If you radiate health and vitality, your body responds accordingly. But here's what most people miss. You cannot give what you don't first possess within yourself. You cannot radiate confidence if you don't feel confident. You cannot give love if you don't first love yourself. This is why inner transformation always precedes outer transformation. Let me tell you about a woman named Patricia who came to me years ago. She was trying to manifest a better relationship with her daughter. She'd been affirming for months, my daughter respects me, my daughter loves me, we have a wonderful relationship. But nothing changed. In fact, things seemed to get worse. When I asked her how she felt when she said those affirmations, she paused. Then she admitted, honestly, I feel like I'm lying. Because deep down, I don't think I deserve her respect. I wasn't there for her when she was young. I worked too much. I missed too many important moments. There it was, the real block. She was trying to affirm a reality that contradicted her deepest belief about herself. And your subconscious mind will never accept a suggestion that conflicts with your core self-image. So we changed the approach. Instead of affirming the relationship she wanted with her daughter, she began affirming her own worthiness of love and forgiveness. I am a loving mother doing my best. I forgive myself for past mistakes. I am worthy of healthy, loving relationships. Within weeks, something shifted. Not in her daughter at first, but in Patricia herself. She stopped approaching their interactions with guilt and desperation. She stopped trying to control outcomes. She simply showed up as a woman who believed she was worthy of love. And that's when everything changed. Her daughter noticed. The energy between them transformed. Because Patricia was no longer radiating neediness and guilt. She was radiating self-acceptance and love. This is the profound truth that most people miss. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot manifest external love without internal love. You cannot attract respect without self-respect. You cannot create abundance in your life if you fundamentally believe you are unworthy of it. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your vibration, your consciousness, your deep inner knowing. This is why affirmations alone will never work if underneath them lies a bedrock of unworthiness. You can stand in front of the mirror every morning and repeat, I am wealthy, I am abundant, I am successful. But if your subconscious mind is whispering back, who are you kidding? You've never been good with money. You always fail. You don't deserve this. Then you're engaged in psychological warfare with yourself, and the subconscious always wins that battle. I've watched people spend years doing affirmations, vision boards, manifestation rituals, all the external techniques, while ignoring the fundamental work of healing their relationship with their own worthiness. It's like trying to fill a cup that has a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it will never be full. The work of self-worth is not glamorous. It doesn't make for inspiring social media posts. It's the quiet, sometimes painful work of sitting with yourself and asking, where did I learn that I wasn't enough? What voices from my past am I still allowing to narrate my present? Which wounds am I carrying that don't even belong to me? Because here's what I've discovered. Most of your beliefs about your own worthiness aren't even yours. They were handed to you by parents who were doing their best but were operating from their own wounds. They were absorbed from a culture that profits from your sense of inadequacy. They were formed in moments when you were too young to question them, too vulnerable to resist them. And now, as an adult, you have the power and the responsibility to examine them, to hold each belief up to the light and ask, is this true? Is this serving me? Is this who I actually am? Or is this just a story I've been telling myself so long that I've mistaken it for reality? The path to genuine self-worth begins with radical self-honesty. Not self-judgment, but self-honesty. There's a profound difference. Self-judgment says, I'm broken and need to be fixed. Self-honesty says, I'm carrying patterns that no longer serve me, and I have the power to release them. When you cultivate genuine self-worth, something miraculous happens. You stop chasing, you stop proving, you stop performing. You begin to live from a place of enoughness, and from that foundation, everything you build is stable. You begin to understand that worthiness isn't a trophy you win at the end of a long race. It's the ground beneath your feet right now. It's the air you're breathing. It's the simple fact that you exist. And here's what shifts when you internalize this truth. Your relationship with your goals transforms completely. You no longer chase success to finally feel okay about yourself. You pursue it because it interests you, because it excites you, because it allows you to express what's alive inside you. The energy changes from desperation to inspiration. I've watched people accomplish remarkable things from both states. And I can tell you without hesitation, what you build from desperation crumbles easily. What you build from wholeness lasts. Because when your foundation is internal worthiness rather than external validation, the storms of life can't topple you. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine two people starting businesses. The first is trying to prove something to parents who doubted them, to peers who dismissed them, to themselves that they matter. Every setback feels like confirmation of their deepest fear, that they're not enough. Every success feels temporary, hollow, because the hole inside remains unfilled. The second person starts from a different place. They know their worth isn't on the line. They're interested in the work, curious about the challenge, aligned with the mission. When setbacks come, they're just information, just course corrections. When success comes, they can actually enjoy it instead of immediately looking over their shoulder for the next threat. Same actions on the outside, completely different inner experience. And that inner experience determines everything: your resilience, your creativity, your ability to bounce back, your capacity to build something sustainable. This is why I keep returning to this foundation, because without it, you're building castles on sand. With it, you're building on bedrock. The subconscious mind doesn't judge the source of your beliefs. It simply accepts what you consistently feed it. If you feed it the belief that your worth depends on achievement, it will drive you toward achievement in the most painful way possible, through fear, through proving, through the exhausting treadmill of never enough. But if you feed it the truth that you are already whole, already worthy, already enough, it will still drive you toward achievement, but now through joy, through curiosity, through the natural expansion of someone who knows their foundation is secure. And here's what makes this so powerful: when you operate from this place of inherent worth, you actually perform better, not worse, better. The research bears this out. Studies on self-compassion versus self-criticism show that people who treat themselves with kindness after failure actually bounce back faster, learn more effectively, and achieve at higher levels than those who beat themselves up. Why? Because self-criticism keeps you focused on protecting your fragile sense of worth. Self-compassion frees you to focus on the actual task, the actual growth, the actual learning. Think about it. When you believe your worth is on the line, every mistake becomes an identity threat. You become defensive, you make excuses, you avoid challenges that might expose your inadequacy. But when you know your worth is secure, mistakes become information, feedback becomes useful, challenges become interesting. You're free to experiment, to fail, to try again, because none of it means anything about your fundamental value as a person. I've watched this transformation happen over and over. The entrepreneur who stops trying to prove himself and starts building things he's genuinely curious about, his business flourishes. The artist who stops performing for validation and starts creating from authentic expression, her work becomes magnetic. The parent who stops trying to be perfect and starts showing up as real, the relationship with their children deepens in ways they never imagined. This is the great paradox. You must give up using achievement to earn worth before achievement can truly satisfy you. You must stop running from unworthiness before you can run toward anything meaningful. You must accept that you are already enough before you can genuinely become more. Your subconscious mind is listening right now. It's receiving these words. And if you choose to accept this truth not just intellectually, but as a living reality, everything changes. Not overnight. Not magically. But gradually, surely, inevitably, the treadmill slows. The voice quiets. The frantic proving gives way to peaceful becoming. You begin to notice something remarkable in this new state of being. The same situations that once triggered your deepest anxieties now reveal themselves as perfectly neutral events. The ringing phone is just sound waves. The unanswered message is just electrons and light. The silence from someone you care about is just silence. Without the frantic interpreter insisting these things mean something terrible about you, they simply exist as phenomena in your experience. And in that neutrality, you discover a profound freedom. I remember walking through a crowded shopping center months after this shift had taken root in me. I noticed a former colleague across the way, someone whose opinion had once held tremendous power over my self-perception. In the old pattern, I would have immediately begun the internal calculation. Do I approach? Do I pretend I haven't seen them? What if they've heard about my recent struggles? What will they think? But on this day, I simply noticed them, felt a mild warmth of recognition, and continued walking. No story. No rehearsal. No defensive preparation. Just a human being seeing another human being and then moving on. The encounter left no residue. My nervous system remained calm. And I realized something extraordinary. I had become emotionally self-sufficient. This doesn't mean you become cold or disconnected. Quite the opposite. When you're no longer constantly managing your anxious internal narrative, you actually become more present with others. You listen more deeply because you're not simultaneously monitoring how you're being perceived. You respond more authentically because you're not filtering everything through, will this make them think I'm okay? The relationships that survive this transformation are the ones that were real all along. Some connections do fall away, those that were held together primarily by your performance, by your careful management of someone else's perception. And yes, this can be painful. But what remains is solid. What remains is true. You find yourself saying no without elaborate justification. You express disagreement without catastrophizing about the consequences. You share your actual thoughts rather than the thoughts you believe will maintain approval. And the world doesn't end. In fact, something miraculous happens. People often respect you more. The ones who matter draw closer. They sense something authentic in you, something stable that wasn't there before. They trust you more because they can feel they're encountering something real. This is the gift hidden within the anxiety that once tormented you.